Good evening, everyone. Tonight I want to speak plainly because this moment demands clarity, not illusions. We live in a time when power is flaunted as a performance and legacy is sold like a brand. But let me be clear, power that is used solely for show and legacy built on hollow promises, those can crumble with the next gust of truth. When a leader sees power as nothing more than a means to an end, to aggrandize himself, to rewrite history, to pretend that every criticism is a personal attack, that is not leadership, that is performance. Power has always revealed more about the one who holds it than the one who grants it. In moments of crisis or triumph, you can tell whether someone sees authority as a sacred responsibility or just another spotlight. There's a difference between power used to lift people up and power used to lift one's own name higher. And the distinction doesn't hide for long. Some folks treat leadership like a mirror. They step into office not to serve, but to admire their own reflection. Every decision becomes a calculation of applause. Every policy is weighed not in its impact on families, workers, or communities, but in how it might pad an ego, boost a brand, or settle an old score. Power, to them, is currency to trade, not a trust to honor. They spend time rewriting their image instead of rewriting unjust laws. They prefer an audience to accountability. But there's another way. Real power is quiet in its confidence, steady in its purpose. It doesn't demand loyalty, it earns it. It doesn't shout to prove strength, it builds strength in others. When used with integrity, power is less about bending others to your will and more about bending the arc of history towards something fairer, kinder, more humane. It means showing up for people who can't write you a check or praise you on television. It means protecting institutions even when they tell you no. It means accepting that the job isn't to be served, but to serve. Too often we see individuals who think holding office gives them permission to do whatever they please. They surround themselves with praise, silence disagreement, and confuse fear with respect. They believe that if they can dominate the conversation, they can define reality. But power used only to protect oneself is brittle. The moment the spotlight shifts or the crowd thins, the performance collapses. Because you can't build legacy out of self-interest any more than you can build community out of vanity. Power guided by principle, on the other hand, builds beyond the moment, doesn't need applause to know its worth. It asks hard questions, seeks counsel, and understands that accountability isn't an inconvenience. It's the backbone of democracy. The leaders who embrace that truth don't always trend on social media. They don't always get credit in real time. But their impact lasts in the lives they change, the futures they shape, and the trust they leave behind. The measure of power isn't how loudly it speaks, but who it speaks for. It's not about how many people fear you, but how many people can count on you. And it's not about clinging to a title. It's about making sure the next person has a better foundation than you did. When power serves only the self, it corrodes everything around it. When it serves a purpose greater than the self, it strengthens everything it touches. At the end of the day, history has a way of sorting spectacle from substance. Those who hoard power for themselves may enjoy their moment, but those who use it to uplift others shape moments that outlast them. The choice between the two isn't just about character, it's about the kind of country we become. Legacy isn't built in the speeches we give about ourselves. It isn't secured in the buildings that carry our names or the headlines that flatter us for a moment. Legacy is forged in the quiet choices, the sacrifices made when no one is watching, the work that endures long after the applause fades. It's about whether the institutions we inherit are stronger or weaker because of our stewardship. It's about whether people's lives are better because of our time in power. Too often, there are those who confuse legacy with self-promotion. They mistake a bigger stage for a bigger impact, louder rhetoric for deeper conviction. They spend their time crafting an image, curating their narrative, insisting history bend to their version of events. They want to be remembered not for what they built, but for how brightly they shined in the moment. That isn't legacy, that's self-aggrandizement. And while it may capture attention, it doesn't hold up against the weight of time. The truth is, the world doesn't honor those who talk endlessly about their greatness. It honors those who create opportunities for others to discover their own. No one remembers the leader who demanded constant praise. They remember the one who invested in schools, expanded healthcare, defended rights, or stood up for those who had no voice. Legacy lives in the child who can dream bigger because someone opened a door. It lives in the family who can breathe easier because someone fought for their dignity. It lives in the citizen who feels included because someone chose unity over division. Self-aggrandizement, on the other hand, is fragile. It demands constant reinforcement, another rally, another headline, another reminder that I alone matter. It feeds on insecurity because deep down there's a fear that the record won't stand on its own. And the irony is, the louder someone insists on their legacy, the more they reveal its hollowness. A true legacy doesn't need defending. It speaks for itself in the lives touched, in the institutions preserved, in the faith people place in the future. There's a reason history reveres some leaders and forgets others. It isn't because one boasted louder or claimed more credit. It's because when the moment came, some chose to plant seeds they might never see grow, while others chose to polish their reflection. Legacy requires humility. It requires the patience to know that you may never see the full fruits of your labor. It requires the courage to prioritize tomorrow over today, service over self. In the end, the contrast couldn't be clearer. One path seeks immortality through constant self-celebration, desperate for validation. The other builds quietly, faithfully, or knowing that the truest measure of leadership is what remains when the cameras turn away. One fades as quickly as it appeared. The other, though imperfect, endures, etched not in monuments of stone, but in the steady progress of a people determined to keep moving forward. That is the difference between a legacy that lasts and a name that vanishes with the echo of its own applause. In any healthy democracy, truth isn't a luxury, it's the ground we stand on. Facts aren't inconveniences to be twisted or ignored when they don't serve our story. They're the compass that keeps a nation from drifting into chaos and confusion. And accountability isn't punishment. It's a promise we make to each other that power will answer to principle, not the other way around. When leaders treat truth as optional, the damage doesn't show up all at once. It starts slowly. A lie here, a distortion there, a bold claim made without evidence, repeated so often that some folks start to believe it simply because they're tired of questioning it. Pretty soon, the line between what's real and what's manufactured begins to blur. And when that line disappears, so does trust in institutions, in the press, in elections, in each other. Facts don't care about feelings or slogans. They don't bend to ego. They don't change because someone shouts louder than the next person. You can dismiss a fact, deny it, or try to bury it under a mountain of distraction, but it doesn't disappear. Eventually, it catches up, and when a nation stops demanding facts, it stops demanding fairness. When leaders stop being accountable, citizens stop believing they matter. Accountability isn't about tearing people down. It's about holding the line. It means that no one, no matter how rich, loud, or powerful, gets to operate above the rules. It means that the truth teller shouldn't be punished while the liar walks free. It means that admitting a mistake is a sign of strength, not weakness, because you can't fix what you refuse to face. There are those who think if they repeat a lie enough times, it becomes truth. They point fingers, shift blame, cry witch hunt whenever someone asks a fair question. They label facts as fake and facts checkers as enemies. They pretend that asking for accountability is the same as carrying out a vendetta. But deep down, they know that the louder they deny, the more they reveal. A strong democracy doesn't require perfection from its leaders, but it demands honesty. It demands that when the public asks, "What happened?" the answer isn't buried under insults or distraction. It demands that when power goes unchecked, someone has the courage to say, "Enough." The American story has always moved forward when truth was faced head-on, when corruption was exposed, when lies were challenged, when the powerful were reminded that the office belongs to the people, not the person sitting in it. And yes, demanding accountability can be uncomfortable. It can divide friends, rattle institutions, and expose things some would rather leave in the dark. But the alternative is far worse, a slow decay where citizens lose faith and the powerful rewrite history in real time. The real test isn't whether someone can avoid blame. It's whether they can confront it, whether they respect the truth even when it cuts against them, whether they understand that legitimacy doesn't come from slogans or rallies, it comes from integrity. And integrity doesn't shout, it stands firm. It answers questions, it owns its choices, truth tells on you, facts follow you, accountability waits for you, and in the end, history listens to them, not to the noise, not to the bluster, not to the excuses, but to the record. There's a kind of mockery that isn't rooted in cruelty or cheap applause, but in clarity. It doesn't exist to humiliate, it exists to expose. It's the kind that uses wit not as a hammer, but as a light revealing what arrogance tries to hide. When used with restraint and purpose, it becomes a subtle but powerful tool, one that punctures delusion, deflates ego, and reminds the audience that common sense still has a voice. Now, not all ridicule is equal. Some folks throw insults like confetti, loud, sloppy, desperate for attention. That kind of mockery is easy to dismiss because it says more about the speaker than the target. It lacks discipline, it lacks wit, and worst of all, it lacks truth. But precision mockery, the kind that draws its power from facts and hypocrisy laid bare, that has weight, it lands not because it's mean, but because it's accurate. There's a reason why a single raised eyebrow, a pause, or a quiet line delivered with a touch of irony can do more damage to a lie than 1,000 shouted arguments. When someone exaggerates their own greatness, when they spin fantasies to replace reality, sometimes the most dignified response isn't rage. It's a measured observation that lets the absurdity speak for itself. A well-placed remark can unmask insecurity. It can show the gap between what someone claims to be and what their record actually shows. It can challenge the myth without descending into mudslinging. It leaves room for the audience to connect the dots on their own, which is far more powerful than telling them what to think. The goal isn't to demean a person. It's to defend the truth from being buried under bravado. There's also a kind of respect that comes with restraint. You don't need to shout about someone's flaws when you can reveal them with a sentence. You don't need vulgarity when irony will do. You don't need to drag someone down when you can simply hold up a mirror. The most devastating critique is often the one delivered with a smile and a pause, because it trusts the listener to understand. And make no mistake, dignity doesn't mean silence. It doesn't mean pretending not to notice when someone is rewriting the rules or mocking the very institutions they once swore to protect. It means responding in a way that elevates the conversation instead of sinking to the level of the performance. It means showing that strength and composure can coexist with sharpness and humor. History remembers not just what was said, but how it was said. The loudest voice isn't always the one that lasts. The clever line that exposes a lie, the calm response that dismantles bluster, the brief moment of laser-focused wit that pulls the curtain back on ambition disguised as leadership, those stick. Because they reveal something real. When mockery is wielded with purpose, it doesn't just silence the noise, it restores perspective. It reminds people that leadership without humility is parody, that ego without accountability is spectacle, and that truth delivered with poise will always outlast the performance. There's a kind of wariness that creeps in when lies get louder than truth, when petty fights drown out real problems, when those in power trade responsibility for theatrics. It's easy to look at all that and shrug, to say nothing changes, to stop expecting better. Cynicism offers a quick kind of comfort. It asks nothing of you. It tells you you're wise for not believing, safe for not caring, but it doesn't build anything. It doesn't heal, it doesn't guide, it doesn't lift. It just sits there, pointing at the cracks, never filling a single one. Hope, in contrast, is hard work. It's not blind, It doesn't ignore the chaos or pretend injustice doesn't exist. It sees the dysfunction, the gridlock, the arrogance, and still insists that the story isn't finished. Hope isn't naive. It's stubborn. It's the belief that even if the system bends under the weight of ego and greed, it can still be repaired by courage, honesty, and effort. Cynicism says, "This is just how things are." Hope replies, "This is not how they have to stay." The cynic watches leaders mock decency, shred norms, rewrite facts, and then declares the whole project a failure. But that conclusion lets the worst behavior set the standard. It hands power to those who abuse it by assuming they'll always get their way. Hope doesn't excuse them. It challenges them. It demands consequences, demands change, demands that people stay engaged instead of walking away in disgust. Some will laugh at the idea of working towards something better. They'll say the system is rigged, the powerful are untouchable, the divisions are too deep, but progress has always come from people who refuse to accept that resignation was wisdom. It came from those who organized when they were told to be quiet, who voted when they were told it didn't matter, who spoke up when the loudest voices tried to shut them down. Hope doesn't erase the anger. It directs it. It doesn't deny the pain. It uses it. And it doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for persistence. The point isn't to believe things will fix themselves. It's to believe that people, when reminded of their stake in the future, can still choose something better than cynicism. They can choose to show up, to vote, to volunteer to speak truth even when the noise tries to drown it out. There's a reason the powerful work so hard to make people feel hopeless. A hopeless public is quiet. It doesn't question. It doesn't organize. It doesn't vote. And it doesn't demand accountability. Cynicism is their ally. Hope is their obstacle. So yes, it's tempting to give in, to let the fatigue take over. But every time someone rejects that temptation, every time someone believes their voice still matters, a little more light cracks through. Cynicism may sound sophisticated, but hope is braver. It keeps faith with the idea that even in a moment of loud division and fragile truth, decency can still win, not by accident, but by effort. So let me end where I began, with a choice. We can be dazzled by the flash, the slogans, the bravado, the spectacle. Or we can choose something steadier: dignity, responsibility, truth, community. We can demand that power bend to principle, that legacy be grounded in service, not in self-glorification. This fight is not about one person. It's about whether we believe that democracy still means something, whether we believe our children deserve leaders who serve, not perform. If we lose that belief, we lose more than elections. We lose ourselves. So tonight, I ask you, hold fast to your reason, refuse the temptation to be swayed by grandeur without substance, and recommit to truth, to justice, to the enduring promise of democracy. Because that is how legacies are built, not by heels pounding a stage, but by steady footsteps toward progress. Thank you, and may we keep faith with the better story we still believe we can write together.